If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hi folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness, joining me for another episode of In the Weeds, the series that explores profound works of televisual and cinematic science fiction and their connections with alternative knowledge research subjects. These connections are sometimes in the form of narrative, metaphor and themes, but often also in the form of the ideas and associations of the creative people behind these works. Today I'm going to be talking about an insightful, subversive and truly thought-provoking piece of television, namely J. Michael Straczynski's sci-fi series Babylon 5. The show was incredibly prescient in metaphorically foreshadowing the shape of the real world in the 2 decades following its original airing. It also dived into dystopian and totalitarian themes, dabbled in esoteric imagery and illusion, and generally served as a veiled commentary on the nature of power, responsibility, corruption, social control, the function of the media, and the notion of the mass of humanity, or in the case of the show, most sentient life in the galaxy, being steered and manipulated by incredibly powerful and largely unseen forces. All of this I will get to in this video. But first, a little history. In February 1993, Warner Bros. US primetime entertainment network aired the pilot episode of the epic science fiction soap opera series Babylon 5. A year later, the series began proper, running for 5 seasons between 1994 and 1998. The final season was broadcast on the Turner Network television channel. The series told the story of a space station populated by a crew of human military officers, ambassadorial representatives from dozens of worlds, and thousands of traders, entrepreneurs and travellers from all over the galaxy. The Babylon 5 premise was conceived as a 5-year novel for television. The overall narrative arc of the series unfolded against a backdrop of galactic war and upheaval, initiated by often unseen forces plotting and conspiring within the shadows of power. Babylon 5 was created, largely written and executive produced by J. Michael Straczynski. Straczynski was born into a family of Jewish-Russian ancestry. His work included films, television series, novels, short stories, comic books, radio dramas and other media. He worked for a number of years in journalism. He also holds a BA with a double major in psychology and sociology with minors in philosophy and literature. The inspiration for the series was based partly on Straczynski's love of science fiction and fantasy. In the Region 2 DVD short for the Babylon 5 Season 1 box set entitled Back to Babylon 5, Straczynski said, "I love sagas. I grew up on Lord of the Rings, the Foundation books and British television, which used a lot of long-term storytelling." Straczynski also cited the influence of shows like The Outer Limits, The Prisoner and Blake's 7. From the very beginning, Straczynski was determined to make a show that was very different from most of the standard serials on television. In his numerous DVD commentaries for the series, he reiterated his convictions and dedication to thoughtful science fiction. The continuity and quality of Babylon 5 may also have had much to do with the fact that Straczynski had a very clear, defined vision for the overall series. In keeping with the tradition of other televisual science fiction visionaries such as Patrick McGoohan and Rod Serling, he also wrote most of the series' episodes, 92 out of the overall 110 segments. The remaining episodes were written by the likes of Peter David, Neil Gaiman, Catherine N. Drennan, Lawrence G. DiTilio, D.C. Fontana and David Gerald. Straczynski's close friend Harlan Ellison, also a creative consultant on the show, received story credits for 2 episodes. Babylon 5 is particularly notable because, like the works of Stanley Kubrick and others, it appears to reflect, perhaps even metaphorically expose, many aspects of the hidden global agenda elite types. The show examined those doctrines and mythologies that figure in elite and secret society beliefs. On the Region 2 DVD of Babylon 5 The Lost Tales, Straczynski elaborated on the name of the show and the partial inspiration drawn from Babylonian creation myth. In the 2007 Babylon 5 The Lost Tales DVD short Fireside Interviews, he said, "Why Babylon 5? If you look back at history, the ancient Babylon was a point of intersection for a lot of different cultures. It was a port of trade. It was a place where a lot of business got done. Also, it was very corrupt, very political. So on the one hand, that represented Babylon 5. In addition to that, we had Babylonian creation myth, which stipulated that the universe was created through the intercession with a balance between order and chaos. That, of course, was the very nature of the Vorlon-Shadow conflict. What we did on B5, you can see, parallels what was done in Babylonian creation myth." The 2 oldest and most powerful alien races featured in the show are the Vorlons and the Shadows. These rival races secretly manipulate and control the other races, the masses, for thousands of years. They both have their own individual perspectives on how and why this agenda of control should be maintained. One highlight of the episode of the series, Zahadun, explains much about the nature of these 2 races, when the character of Justin rhetorically asks, "Who decides that the working day is from 9 till 5 instead of 11 till 4? Who decides that the hemlines will be below the knee this year and short again the next? Who draws up the borders, controls the currency, and handles all the decisions that happen transparently around us?" Justin also describes the Vorlons as like your parents, I suppose. They want to play nice, clean your room, do it by the rules. I guess you could call them lords of order. He describes the Shadows as bringing two sides together. They fight, a lot of them die, but those who survive are stronger, smarter and better. The Vorlons are often heard asking the question, who are you? The Shadows asks, what do you want? On the DVD commentary for the episode, Straczynski suggested there are some social philosophers who actually agree with this and say, yeah, this is how it works, and it is how society works. My philosophy has always been that the monster never sees the monster in the mirror. We all have rationales for what we do, so I didn't want it to be just blowing things up. They had to have a rationale that made sense to them, and it wasn't just bad guys. They think they're right, the Shadows think they're right, the truth is somewhere in between. Some alternative knowledge researchers have proposed that the agenda elite consists of rival cabals with different perspectives on how to control the masses. Some believe that the masses should be treated like children, others believe the masses should be approached as nothing more than drones or cattle. All sides have different overarching goals in mind, but the attitudes and methods differ. Interestingly, the aforementioned episode suggests that there was once an equal balance between the Vorlons and the Shadows. Eventually, both sides decided to attempt to manipulate the masses to respond favourably to their distinct dictates. In the episode Zahadun, Anna Sheridan explains they even started interfering with the development of younger races. When you look at a Vorlon, you see what they want you to see. They're manipulated us so that we'd respond favourably to them. They even interfered with us at a genetic level, taking humans and adjusting them. This paradigm mirrors the doctrines of sociological, religious and political beliefs, as well as the manipulative efforts of the mainstream media. In the show, it's interesting that the younger races eventually decide to push back against this ideology of control and choose an alternative path of their own making. Motives and beliefs of the agenda elite are littered throughout Babylon 5. In the Season 1 episode And the Sky Full of Stars, the central character, Commander Jeffrey Sinclair, played by the late Michael O'Hare, is shown being taken prisoner by the Minbari race. He's shackled to the lower side of a triangular frame surrounded by 9 cloaked hooded figures. He's scanned by a triangular object with a glowing eye in the centre. The object is eventually revealed as a triluminary. The triangle mysteriously appears, then disappears, on Minbari Ambassador Delen's forehead in a later episode of the first season. Curiously, the Minbari are the key alien race responsible for leading the fight against the controlling influence of the Shadows in the series. The logo for the Minbari Federation is an upside-down triangle with the glowing sphere behind the lower point. This could easily be interpreted as the elite pyramid of control with the glowing capstone, inverted to represent a reversal of the former control mechanism. The all-seeing eye motif is equally apparent in the show. In the first season episode Size and Portents, Centauri Ambassador Londo Mollari becomes embroiled in a plot to steal the Eye, the property of the very first Centauri Emperor. The Eye is described as no greater symbol of authority. The Eye also figures multifaceted prophecy relating to the fate of the character Londo. One chance to change his destiny involves saying the eye that does not see. Events later in the series involve Londo's enemy Shakar being imprisoned on the Centauri homeworld. The Emperor orders Shakar's left eye to be removed for looking at him in an offensive manner. Londo visits him after his ordeal and asks him, how is the eye? Shakar replies, it sees. Numbers also feature prominently in the series, particularly the number 3. In the episode Deathwalker, Vorlon Ambassador Kosh echoes the Masonic Trinity when describing understanding as a 3-edged sword. The 3 central plot nexus characters of the series are called the One, 3 into 1. Commander Jeffrey Sinclair is revealed as the one who was. Minbari Ambassador Delen is the one who is, and Captain John Sheridan is the one who will be. The Minbari Grey Council, of 9 incidentally, consists of 3 representatives from the warrior caste, 3 from the worker caste, and 3 from the religious caste. 3 times 3 equals 9. 2 of the 3 castes portray the black and white Masonic motif, the religious caste dressed in white and the warrior caste dressed in black. Their combined leadership reflects in the Grey Council, whose motif is, we are grey, we stand between the candle and the star, between the darkness and the light. The mind control paradigm is also alluded to in the show via the Psychor organisation, humans with telepathic or psychic abilities. An early episode, Spider in the Web, reveals that the Psychor run a number of black operations, Project Lazarus, Bureau 13, etc. Project Lazarus involves taking coma victims, those fatally wounded, those just dead, etc., and programming them with a mission augmented with technology, i.e. transhumanism, to be assassins. The subconscious mind of these victims is trapped reliving the trauma of their fatality. The show's first resident telepath, Talia Winters, has a vision in the episode Deathwalker of herself trapped in a hall of mirrors. The mirror reflection motif is often a part of mind control programming according to certain victims and researchers of the phenomenon. It's eventually revealed that Talia Winters unwittingly received a sleeper programming from her Psychor masters. A trigger is used to reveal her sinister sleep agent personality. The character of Susan Ivonova also has a dream of her mother in a high chair, flanked either side by individuals wearing Baroque Masonic masks, one happy, one sad, and Psychor badges. It's revealed that Ivonova is a latent telepath who has hidden her status to avoid having to join the Psychor. Her mother was discovered to be telepathic and refused to join the Psychor. She was administered powerful drugs that affected her personality to such a degree that she ultimately committed suicide. In the dream, Ivanova's mother asks a Psychor officer about the drugs. Will it make the voices go away? The officer replies, no, but it will make them sing like birds. All of these aspects, particularly the birds in the cage phenomenon, are recognisable allusions to trauma-based mind control. A similar process is also part of the character arc of Security Chief Michael Garibaldi. The character is the archetypal mind control victim. The character has a fractured personality with a history of alcohol abuse and destructive relationships. The character loves Disney, Warner Brother type cartoons and uses the term peekaboo, considered to be a mind control terminology, peekaboo ICU, as his security password. Disney cartoon characters are used by Garibaldi as code names and jargon in the latter episodes of Season 4. Disney's Seven Dwarfs names are also aliases for the members of the Mars Strike team assigned by Garibaldi. Throughout the 4th season of the show, Garibaldi becomes an unwittingly programmed sleeper agent for the Psychor agenda. On the DVD commentary for the episode Face of the Enemy, J. Michael Straczynski discussed the development of his character. He said, there's a certain element here from the Manchurian Candidate of a person having been brainwashed and then sent back in again. That to me always seemed to be a particularly scary idea of someone who was not anymore what you thought he was, and the image of Garibaldi in the mirror erasing his own face was very powerful. Within the Babylon 5 universe, it's usually the Psychor that is responsible for creating these trauma-based mind control scenarios. I find it telling that the Psychor logo is uncannily similar to the unofficial symbol adopted by the British Psychoanalytical Society, which therefore resonates with those psychoanalytical pioneers of the Tavistock Institute. I suspect that this resemblance may have been partly inspired by Straczynski's interest in psychology. The larger story arc of Babylon 5 involves a cabal of elite factions on Earth, headed by the tyrannical Earth President Morgan Clark, who are conspiring to take control of the entire Earth Alliance. In the episode Revelations, one character remarks, there's a new order coming back home. You can either be a part of it or you can be stepped on. Several organisations appear in the wake of this conspiracy, such as the Orwellian Ministry of Peace, Ministry of Truth and the Night Watch. In the DVD commentary for the episode Severed Dreams, Straczynski explains, this again is part of looking at how any historical tyranny takes place. Clark, back home on Earth, has created an atmosphere of fear, of suspicion. The Night Watch is there. You frighten the population first, get them afraid of themselves, of each other, and when you have a frightened population, you can then put in groups that will control them and organise them and get them to do what you want them to do. Bullying doesn't tend to work, but making a person afraid, that tends to work. This is the problem of any tyranny, that people of goodwill tend to go along with them because they don't want to stand up, they don't want to get into trouble. Babylon 5 also reflected the agenda-driven concepts of perception and the mainstream media. The fictional ISN news network is shown stifling the truth about larger events and circumstances. Reporters want to speak out, but the powers that be prevent them. Eventually, the reporters attempt to broadcast information about a large-scale agenda cover-up on Earth and are taken off the air immediately. Straczynski commented on this moment on the DVD commentary for the episode Severed Dreams. For the first time, you see the anchors, who have been very dispassionate and very almost distant, come out and take a stand and speak out, and this lends a certain air of immediacy to the show and a reality to the show. You really feel for the first time that the news is being taken over. The first job of a tyranny is to control the media, and here we see that happening for the first time. We try and play a lot with how media is perceived and the media perceives us. What is the nature of truth in the show? If you see it on camera, is it true? Here the lie is delivered with a smile. Everything's just fine, and we're all going to have cake afterwards. The media, I think, is something we should always question. Whilst creating the narrative device of a dictatorial Earth, Straczynski wanted as much realism and believability as possible. He based the catalysing event, the assassination and subsequent cover-up of Earth President Santiago, on the assassination of John F. Kennedy. The scene where Santiago's Vice President Morgan Clark is sworn in was purposely staged to resemble the swearing in of Lyndon Johnson after JFK's assassination. Interestingly, the scene was shot on the anniversary of Johnson's swearing in. In the DVD commentary for the Season 1 episode Chrysalis, Straczynski said, I gave very particular instructions to recreate the staging of the photograph in which Lyndon Johnson takes over from JFK after the assassination. The same layout, posture, background and so on. We even had a photo on set for reference. The creepy thing is that day we shot the scene was the anniversary of the day it actually took place. Very weird atmosphere on set that day. The show's narrative device that could so readily be described as in the same context as the real hidden global agenda elite types are incredibly relevant and remarkably prophetic. The situation on Earth in the Babylon 5 narrative could easily be metaphorically transposed to the US post 9/11 era. President Clark is recognisably a cipher for George Bush Jr. The Night Watch and Ministry of Peace are analogous with the contemporary US Homeland Security. ISN, the Interstellar News Network, is portrayed as wielding the same perception management techniques as the likes of the BBC, CNN or Fox News. However, the Babylon 5 concept was created, according to several sources, over a decade before 9/11. With this in mind, it's worth examining just how open Straczynski was to the global agenda concept. How much did he really know when he created the show? Did he have agenda connections? If he was informed, as Babylon 5 seems to indicate, has he continued to express those views post-Babylon 5 and more importantly, post 9/11? The Babylon 5 production crew had a close relationship with certain agenda elite types, namely the likes of NASA and certain arms of the military-industrial complex. The production crew also received informal technical advice on the series from Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Engineers and scientists visited the sets on several occasions throughout its run. During the third season, NASA approached the production team to ask if they could use the model of the Starfury fighter as the basis for a possible orbital forklift truck design that could be used outside the International Space Station. JMS agreed, so long as any such future vehicle based on said design was named a Starfury. On the Season 5 Region 2 DVD extra Beyond Babylon 5, Patricia Talman, who played telepath Lita Alexander, said, "You know you've done something right when the guys that are actually in space and wearing the suits are coming to visit you playing like you're in space." Jerry Doyle, Security Chief Garibaldi, went even further, asserting that "I know a lot of rocket scientists, astronauts and people in the military that dig the show." Doyle should know better than most. He gained a BS in aeronautics at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in 1978 and served in the US Air Force. Following his stint on Babylon 5, Doyle became deeply involved with politics. He ran as the Republican nominee for the United States House of Representatives in California's 24th Congressional District, Los Angeles and Ventura counties. In 2000, he lost to Democrat Brad Sherman. It's also noteworthy that in 2003, Bruce Boxleitner, who played central character John Sheridan, was appointed to the Board of Governors of the National Space Society. Until recently, the official website for the society boasted of its association with Wernher von Braun. They described it as a non-profit educational space advocacy organisation founded by Dr. Wernher von Braun. This has now been removed from the official website. Oddly, the connection was still noted for a number of years on Wikipedia. Straczynski also appears to have a degree of reverence for World War II and talks of his respect for Winston Churchill. One of the main ships defending the Babylon 5 station in the key story arc episode Severed Dreams is called the EAS Churchill. On the DVD commentary for this episode, Straczynski revealed, "We used a lot of images on our posters and in our symbolism from World War II because that was perhaps one of the last really clean fights we had. There isn't a lot of ambiguity in that particular war. There has been in wars since then." Despite revealing that he is aware of the ambiguity in more recent wars, Straczynski doesn't seem to be aware of certain aspects of the real history of World War II that also differs somewhat from what is taught in history books. Churchill was also a high-ranking Freemason. If Straczynski has any detailed insight into the larger global agenda and the elite types, you would think that he would really understand this era of history more fully. Why then does he refer to it as the last really clean fight we had? The military aspects of the show gradually morphed as it progressed into a growing band of freedom fighters which only fought for a truly just cause. This is rare in any mainstream media entertainment output, especially ones featuring fictitious or otherwise military organisations. Most fictional narratives which feature a military angle usually show the protagonists blindly subservient to the chain of command and following orders. If they don't, they're usually shown as having good conscience doing this for the moral right reasons. On the DVD commentary for the episode Face of the Enemy, Straczynski spoke about the show's militaristic approach. Where is the morality in blindly following orders if you are given an order that you feel is not appropriate? What ultimately triumphs is the moral authority of saying you're doing something wrong and you have to stop. It is often the person that says the most damning things that is being the most patriotic. Several years ago, with these thoughts ringing in my ears, I decided to try and find out what perspective Straczynski has on the subject of larger global agendas. Straczynski has always shared many of his thoughts, motivations and activities online, having used the internet extensively and personally to interact with the Babylon 5 fan community and supporters during the time of its airing and for many years afterwards. It's therefore far more likely to find references to his own thoughts on any given subject than perhaps any other scriptwriter, director, producer or showrunner in the business. I began with Straczynski's perspectives on the assassination of US President John F. Kennedy, given that this event inspired much of the early conspiracy of light narrative in Babylon 5. In the DVD commentary for the first season finale Chrysalis, Straczynski states that one man, in this case Lee Harvey Oswald, can change the world. This quote seemingly prefigures that he was unaware or unwilling to entertain the evidence indicating that the assassination of JFK was far more than the act of a lone gunman. A comment once made by Straczynski on his JMS News website, the subject matter was USA Today and the Truth, dated 11th of the 1st, 1994, seems to muddle this perspective even further. He said, "The similarity to the Kennedy situation and the use of LBJ swearing in photo as reference for the Earth Force One shot were definitely intentional. Remember, we're trying to construct a metaphor here as one of the levels on which the show operates. What do I personally think regarding the Kennedy situation? I can't think of anything less interesting and less grounded than my own opinion on this subject. I've done an awful lot of reading in this area, but there are a lot of folks who know a lot more than I do, with probably many of them on this system. The House subcommittee that investigated this issue some time ago came to the conclusion there was most likely a conspiracy of some sort, but couldn't find any overwhelming evidence to any other shooter, these being two different but important issues. Do I think there was some sort of conspiracy? And to qualify as a conspiracy you only need one or two other people? Yes. Were there other shooters? My sense is probably, but not necessarily. Will we ever know the full story? No. Should we ever stop trying? No. Strangely, in 2002, Straczynski was asked, quoted from the JMS News J. Michael Straczynski message archive, "In Babylon 5, Santiago's murder is obviously part of a coup conspiracy. Do you feel the same way about JFK, or does the parallel extend solely to the events of that day?" He replied, "If Oswald acted alone, I'm a Martian panda bear." In 2003, Straczynski expressed views about the Iraq invasion, the lack of evidence indicating weapons of mass destruction, and the discontinuity between these events and 9/11. With this in mind, I wondered about Straczynski's view on the larger scope of 9/11. It wasn't long before I was reminded of his writing tenure from 2001 to 2007 on the long-running Marvel comic book series The Amazing Spider-Man, and his famous 9/11 Black issue featuring Spider-Man and other superheroes dealing with the destruction of the World Trade Center that effectively supported the official version of events of 9/11. Post-Babylon 5, Straczynski has indicated that he seemingly accepts the official narrative of 9/11, although he has remained incredibly critical of the subsequent War on Terror, which is perhaps ironic given that it was engineered via 9/11. Previous observations he has made indicate that he has perhaps no time for any even substantial evidence to the contrary regarding the events of September 11, 2001. In 1995, a user on the newsgroup Rec Arts Sci-Fi TV Babylon 5 asked Straczynski about the appropriateness of using conspiracies in a fictional context. Here is his reply, slightly abridged for conciseness. He said, "From Rod Serling, when a device he created for a fictional story, a bomb wired to a plane set to detonate when the plane dropped below a given altitude, ended up being used in real life, a writer cannot be held accountable for the pathology of fools. Fiction ain't the problem. To say that it is immoral for sci-fi writers to take stories about government conspiracies is not only contrary to the very nature of fiction and sci-fi in particular, it also misses the point by 1,000 miles. It isn't that folks in the backwoods have been watching TV shows or reading novels about fictional government conspiracies. It's that some folks have been making documentaries and writing tracts that are supposed to be the truth about what's going on. It isn't fiction that's the problem. It's G. Gordon Liddy telling people that if they're going to shoot at ATF officers, they ought to aim at the head because they wear flak jackets. It's Jesse Helms who told the press that if Clinton ever came to his state, the press better bring a bodyguard with him. It's Rush Limbaugh and his other ilk who for years have been making the distinction between liberals and Americans. It's fanatical elements within the religious right who feel the need to create vast government conspiracies that say the government is going to come and stamp the number of the beast on their forehead at any moment now. A climate of fear and paranoia and disloyalty for the crime of disagreement has been created and fostered by those who have most to gain from it, and now they are trying to run from what they have done. It ain't TV shows about stuff happening in the far future. I don't think anyone out there watching B5 has any belief whatsoever that this stuff is real and present and can be responded to. If there are one or two lunatics who might possibly read something into it, they could do so of any programme, regardless of content. Although I understand what Straczynski was trying to say, there are indeed those who are seemingly exposing the global agenda who act in very irresponsible ways and often have an agenda all their own. He appears to be ignoring a couple of key points. Firstly, there are real state and or elite orchestrated conspiracies and cover-ups in the world. There's plenty of quantifiable evidence to substantiate the existence of at least some of these cover-ups, e.g. state-sponsored mind control, 9/11, etc. Secondly, Hollywood fiction does appear to regularly contain themes relating to these subjects, but the stories may misinform, muddle, or confuse our thoughts about them. The problem is that it is uncertain who is orchestrating this media mechanism and to what end. When it comes to the content of the stories that get made into TV shows or films, is it the decisions of high-level studio executives? Is it an editorial decision, or do writers and directors also have a say? There appears to be evidence of the latter if we look at people like Stanley Kubrick, Patrick McGowan, and Gene Roddenberry, for example. Straczynski seems to grasp the themes of corporate control and tyrannical authoritarianism, concepts that go hand in hand with the larger global agenda, but they also go hand in hand as well with science fiction. Interestingly, Straczynski and Bryce Zabel, the creator of the quasi-conspiracy science fiction series Dark Skies, collaborated on an attempt to reboot the Star Trek franchise. Their meetings began in 1999 and culminated in a 14-page treatment that was presented to Paramount Pictures in 2004. In an article entitled Spaced Out Rebooting Star Trek, Zabel wrote, "The take that JMS and I came up with included using the original characters, as the new film will do apparently, but not as young officers at Starfleet Academy. We wanted to do what they did in the world of comics, create a separate universe, Universe A, for all the past TV and film Trek continuity in order to free ourselves creatively so we could embrace the good stuff, banish the bad and try some new things. In our reboot Universe B, we wanted to start over, use Kirk, Spock and McCoy and others in a powerful new origin story about what it was that bonded them in such strong friendship and show them off as you'd never seen them before." Although the idea was rejected, this same premise was pretty much how J.J. Abrams rebooted the franchise just a few years later. Why is any of this interesting or relevant? Well, Zabel has written extensively about JFK assassination and the subsequent cover-up. He's also researched the Yeti UFO cover-up, including collaborating on a book called AD After Disclosure with researcher Richard M. Doyle. Zabel even gave the famous alternative knowledge researcher broadcaster Art Bell a cameo appearance in Dark Skies. Bell portrayed a member of the Majestic 12 Board of Directors, in this case CBS President William S. Paley, in the episode We Shall Overcome. In his book Silver Screen Sources, Sorting Fact from Fantasy in Hollywood UFO Movies, Robbie Graham documents Bryce Zabel's encounters with mystery men, in inverted commas, during the production of his series Dark Skies. Apparently one man claimed to have inside information on UFOs. A few days later he returned to NBC with several men who claimed to work for naval intelligence. Zabel ultimately rejected their offer. He said, quoted in Robbie Graham's Silver Screen Sources, "It felt like it was staged for us, like it was built around us. It seems to be that we'd been targeted for some elaborate disinformation job. Do I think they were really going to read us into a secret UFO program? No, but it did seem like they were really part of some official organisation. One of the guys said he was a SEAL, and I have to say all those guys looked very hardcore military guys. They looked and spoke like military guys." Straczynski's connections with Zabel, and therefore perhaps Richard Doyle, opens up the very real possibility that he is at least aware of the main contentions of their respective research subjects. In more recent years I've established that although Richard Doyle was aware that there was something very wrong with the official narrative of 9/11, he was not in full possession of the available evidence regarding 9/11, namely the evidence gathered by the likes of Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson. This might explain why his peers, i.e. J. Michael Straczynski, and perhaps even Bryce Zabel, were also not aware of such information. Fortunately, Richard Doyle has become more informed in recent times, shown clearly in an interview from a couple of years ago with Andrew Johnson. J. Michael Straczynski was close friends with author Harlan Ellison, who assisted extensively with the production of Babylon 5. During the latter decades of his life, Ellison expressed some telling, if somewhat odd, views about 9/11 and the subsequent War on Terror. He once famously said on the subject in his 3 Inquiry Volume 22 No. 4 article Terrorists, "You are not entitled to your opinion, you are entitled to your informed opinion. No one is entitled to be ignorant." Despite having utilised the themes of conspiracies and cover-ups to great effect in Babylon 5, and his contact with a number of people who are, to varying degrees, informed about certain cover-ups and evidence supporting their existence, I'm slightly baffled by Straczynski's seeming unwillingness to accept or even acknowledge the larger scope of this phenomenon in a real-world context. Maybe this is the nature of a writer's inspirations. Grab your ideas where you can, even if you don't necessarily agree. As Aristotle said, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. However, I don't think Aristotle meant for people to entertain an idea and simultaneously disregard it. There was a time when I considered Babylon 5 to be the last best hope for a television series that had anything left worth saying. I still believe that Babylon 5, like the likes of The Prisoner and Blake 7 that went before it, was a compelling television show with much of relevance to say. However, I remain a little perplexed as to what it was that Straczynski was really trying to say or why he was saying it. There are 2 coders to this story. The first one relates to 9/11. It's a truly bonkers coda, actually. At some point in the late 2002, Bruce Boxleitner, B5's Captain John Sheridan, visited the US White House in company of the then-wife Melissa Gilbert, president of the Screen Actors Guild, who also played Boxleitner's on-screen Babylon 5 wife Anna Sheridan, for a discussion with some of the functionaries there concerning acting roles moving north of the Canadian border. During this meeting, Karl Rove, senior advisor and deputy chief of staff during the George W. Bush administration, entered the room and specifically asked to meet Boxleitner. Rove apparently told him, this was posted on the FIJC members number 1092 on March 6, 2004, 12:21 a.m, "Things you don't expect to hear." Rove said, "I just wanted to tell you that I'm a big science fiction fan and that Babylon 5 is the best science fiction television series ever, and the president thinks so too." It does make you wonder what must go through the mind of former President President Bush, every time he catches a rerun of Babylon 5. Does he get off on the esoteric symbolism, or do certain scenarios appear a little too reminiscent of events that took place during his tenure as presidency? Who knows? But you can almost hear him saying, "Hey Laura, they're playing my song again." He must laugh his ass off. The final coda to this story is the events that have taken place across the world since the beginning of 2020. I'm not going to get into that matter too much here, particularly with YouTube's censorship at the moment. We'll call it the beer bug. But one of the things that I found particularly precedent even to this day is how the media spreads fear, something that's happening now, and how this happened in Babylon 5. We also had the Night Watch. We also had people informing on other people for not buying the official version of things. This, again, is very much what's happening now in the world. Official narratives, versions of things that we're supposed to take at face value. It's not like that. plenty of evidence out there to indicate that there is something very much different going on. But I think it's very much worth watching Babylon 5 today. I have recently rewatched the entire series, and I find it remarkably prescient. I thought it was prescient in the world post 9/11. It remains so now. I'm seeing a lot of things that are happening in the world now, way back when they were in Babylon 5 as well, playing out, metaphorically at least anyway. It really is a show that's worth taking the time to watch. It's prescient, it's thought-provoking, it's insightful. It's got a cracking story arc to it as well. It's one of the best out there in the history of television science fiction. Please check it out if you can. And that's it for today. I just want to say thank you very much for watching this video. Please like it, share it about if you can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. YouTube likes to see that things are happening. That's the way the algorithms work. So I truly, truly appreciate it. Take care for now, and I will see you again very, very soon.